Welcome. Today, you're about to hear a story that sounds like fiction, but every event you're about to witness really happened. What are the spookiest stories you've ever heard? In 1968, a sailor sent fake updates to the world showing he was winning a global race. When they found his boat, he was completely gone. Donald Crowhurst entered a solo, non-stop round-the-world boat race. Desperate to win the prize money, he quickly fell behind, but instead of quitting, he made a fatal decision. He began transmitting false radio coordinates, pretending he was breaking world speed records. Millions of people back home were cheering for him, completely unaware that he was actually floating alone in the Atlantic. As months passed in complete isolation, his mind began to break down. His logbook slowly turned from navigation entries into eerie, incomprehensible philosophical rants. 8 months later, his boat was found floating silently. His journals were on board, but Donald had vanished into the ocean. Subscribe to Story Pulse for more shocking true stories. The voices from the deep hole in the 1970s, Soviet scientists began drilling the Kola super-deep borehole, attempting to penetrate as deep into the Earth's crust as possible. When the drill passed the 12-kilometer mark, temperatures spiked unexpectedly above 200 degrees Celsius, and the rock began acting like a dense, viscous fluid. The equipment broke repeatedly without any clear explanation. Hoping to record the movement of tectonic plates, researchers lowered a specialized heat-resistant microphone down into the abyss. When they played the recording back in the lab, the entire team froze in sheer terror. Instead of the low rumble of shifting earth, the speaker played the unmistakable sound of millions of human voices screaming in pain and agony. The audio was so clear that several workers refused to return for their next shift. Just hours later, a mysterious explosion rocked the shaft, even though no gas buildups had been detected. Shortly after, the site was kept with a massive steel lid and completely abandoned. Officially, the project was closed due to a lack of funding, but that recording from 12 kilometers below still leaves people chilled to the bone. The nightmare of 76 since the 1970s. A shortwave radio station known as the Buzzer or of 76 has been broadcasting a creepy, monotonous buzzing sound day and night, repeating about 20 times every minute. But the most unsettling part isn't the noise itself, it's what happens when the buzzing suddenly stops. A few times a year, the drone cuts out, replaced by a cold, distorted human voice reading a random sequence of Russian names, numbers, and code words before returning to the endless hum. To this day, no one truly knows where the signal comes from or who those codes are meant for. In 2010, the signal died completely for the first time in over 30 years, leaving behind dead silence. A few hours later, static filled the air, carrying the faint sounds of heavy breathing, footsteps, and furniture being dragged across a room. By the next day, the buzzing returned as if nothing had happened. A popular theory claims this broadcast is part of a nuclear dead-hand system designed to launch a counter-strike if the signal ever goes permanently silent, meaning as long as that eerie buzz continues, our world is still safe. The ghost of Flight 401 on the foggy night of December 29, 1972. Eastern Airlines Flight 401 crashed into the Florida Everglades, tragically claiming the lives of over 100 passengers and crew members. Among the victims were the captain, Bob Loft, and the flight engineer, Don Repo. Following the massive investigation, the airline salvaged several undamaged, high-value mechanical parts from the wreckage and reinstalled them into other TriStar jets within their fleet. Not long after, whispers began circulating among flight attendants and pilots. On the specific aircraft equipped with the salvaged parts, crew members reported encountering the apparitions of Bob Loft and Don Repo. Flight attendants described seeing Engineer Repo sitting in the galley or the avionics bay, looking intensely pale but completely real. Multiple pilots claimed Repo warned them directly about impending mechanical failures, such as faulty engines or electrical glitches, which were subsequently checked and proven to be genuine issues. At first, management threatened to fire anyone spreading what they called ghost stories. But the turning point came when a senior captain and a high-ranking airline executive were boarding a plane. They both watched a man dressed in a full captain's uniform walk past them and sit down in first class. When they approached him, they realized it was the deceased Bob Loft. He looked up, smiled softly, and vanished into thin air right before their eyes. Shortly after, Eastern Airlines quietly ordered every single salvaged part to be removed and destroyed. The faceless Venetian guest. In the autumn of 1982, a young couple rented a secluded, centuries-old canal apartment in a quiet district of Venice. On their very first night, the wife woke up at 3:00 am to a bone-chilling cold in the room. Standing motionless in the dark corner of the bedroom was a tall figure wearing a dark vintage cloak and a wide-brimmed hat. The figure was completely still, but she could feel an intense, suffocating gaze fixed upon her. Terrified, she screamed and shook her husband awake. The moment he flipped on the light switch, the corner was empty. Shaken, they tried to convince themselves it was just a vivid nightmare or a strange trick of the shadows. However, the next morning, they discovered 3 deep, jagged scratch marks etched into the inside of their heavy wooden bedroom door, as if something had been desperately trying to claw its way out. On their final night, the nightmare returned, but far worse. The wife woke up to find the same cloaked figure standing right at the foot of their bed. As a beam of moonlight cut through the window and illuminated the stranger's head, her heart stopped. Beneath the shadow of the brimmed hat, the face was completely smooth. There were no eyes, no nose, and no mouth, just blank skin stretching across a head. Panicked, the couple abandoned all their luggage and fled into the night, never returning to the apartment. 3. The 35 calls from the wreckage. On September 12, 2008, a devastating commuter train collision occurred in Chatsworth, California, leaving dozens dead beneath twisted metal and crushed steel. Among the passengers trapped in the front car was 49-year-old Charles E. Peck. As emergency crews rushed to the chaotic scene, a baffling sequence of events began to unfold for Charles' family. Over the next 12 hours following the crash, the cell phones of Charles' fiancée, his mother, his son, and his sister received a total of 35 incoming calls originating directly from Charles' phone number. Every single time his family frantically answered, they heard only faint static, heavy breathing, and a soft rustling sound on the other end of the line. Whenever they called back, it went straight to voicemail. Believing Charles was trapped but alive and desperately trying to summon help, his family tearfully urged rescue teams to keep digging toward his location. Using the cell phone tower signal from those incoming calls, search teams finally pinpointed the exact location of the front train car at 3:20 am. When they reached Charles, they found his body, but the coroner's report revealed a chilling truth. Charles had died instantly upon the initial impact, hours before the very first call was made. To this day, his physical phone was never recovered from the wreckage, leaving experts completely unable to explain how a dead man's phone dialed his loved ones 35 times throughout the night. Which story was the creepiest? Drop a comment below, hit that follow button, and stay tuned for part 2.